Welcome, everybody, to Reading with Catherine Asaro. And just about a tradition, Reading with Catherine Asaro is with Catherine Asaro. So I will welcome the incandescent Catherine Asaro.
I paid him to say that, right? Hi, everybody. So there's actually people here. Hi. I am thrilled to be out here. This is my second Arizona conference or convention. You know, I live on the East Coast in Long Island, so I don't get out here that often. Though I may be moving to California, so I hope to come in person to these cons more often. I'm a scientist, a theoretical physicist. I was everybody's least favorite teacher. I taught math. Actually, I had a lot of students who liked this subject. And, you know, I had students who were competition level. So, but, you know, I have that profession that when people ask you what you do, you always get, oh, yeah, that was a subject I hated most. But I do love math. I love physics. I do. Basically, I'm an applied mathematician. I apply methods of mathematical physics to problems, or I did. I retired about a year ago. And now I just write full time, which I've always been a writer. I always considered myself a writer first. But my teaching and running the Chesapeake math program, which is what I did, took up so much time that I can write more now. My doctorate's from Harvard in theoretical chemical physics. My master's is also from Harvard in physics, and my undergraduate degree is from UCLA in chemistry. So, you know, I learned a lot of science, chemistry, biochemistry, physics, astronomy. I loved it all too. So I try to put that all in my books. I'm going to read to you from a book called The Vanished Seas. Ta-da. There it is. So The Vanished Seas is one of what's called Major Bajan mysteries. It's not a series except in the sense that the main character, Major Bajan, she's a private investigator, right? She was born when many years ago, Mike Resnick said to me, he was when he was alive, he was a very well-known anthologist. He had all sorts of anthologies, and it was really an honor to be asked by him to write a story for one of his anthologies. So he came to me and he said, Catherine, you're going to write a mystery. I was like, oh, really? I've never done that. I didn't tell him that, though. And what he was interested in, he wanted me to write a novella for an anthology that was a science fiction version of the kind of hardened, you know, PI, Raymond Chandler, that kind of thing. And it was going to be called Down These Dark Spaceways, kind of a play on the mystery traditions of Down These Dark Alleys, that sort of thing. And so I started reading Raymond Chandler, and I enjoyed the books, but I thought, you know, the hardened male first person, you know, story, private investigators have been done to death, right? And I said, what we need is a female version. And so Major Bajan was born. And well, I think that's really all the introduction she needs. Oh, by the way, it was published in his anthology, and then later a publisher picked it up, Bing Books, which is published through Simon & Schuster, or I mean distributed through them. And they asked me to make a full-length story out of it. So of course I did. They paid me to do it. So. But the stories are standalone. You don't have to know. It's not a series in the sense that you have to know what went on in books before. So I will let this one speak for itself. I'm going to start from the beginning. The first chapter of The Vanished Seas is called The Vanishing Act. Light glittered through the crystal columns in the ballroom of the Kita mansion. Women in sleek clothes and men in sensual black and silver filled the room, all with the ageless beauty that wealth and power could bestow. Music played while the glitterati danced. So yeah, these people were rich. To say I didn't normally attend parties with imperialate nobility was like saying it didn't normally rain in this region of the world, Raylicon. I mean, the place is a freaking desert. The few humans who lived here had built this gleaming city of cries. the stark jewel of an empire, a paragon of modern civilization, and all that. Not that it wasn't true. The city of cries, despite its name, wasn't a place where people wept, at least not where you could see it. Tonight, the planners had done themselves proud in this reception for Scorpio Corporation, a simple name for a conglomerate that was anything but simple, an empire of commercial industries and military contracts. I'd attended as a guest of the Royal House of Majda because, well, who the hell knew why? Majda wanted a private investigator present, so they sent me. After all, they paid me an exorbitant retainer, not to mention the penthouse they'd given me in Cries. Although I'd never been at ease in their stratospheric world of influence, I had adapted during the 2 years I'd worked for them. Earth years, the human standard. To fit in tonight, I'd even worn an evening gown, chic and shimmering gold, the type of clothes I usually avoided like a techno plague. I normally was a black leather and muscle shirt gal. The Kita mansion stood on the outskirts of Cries in the foothills of the St. Perville Mountains. Attending this gala had started out as one of my easiest jobs ever. Just go to the party so I could later tell the Majdas if I noticed anything unusual. They apparently wanted me to judge how the guests reacted to whatever big announcement the Scorpio Slicks had planned for tonight. With so many of the Imperial Eights Mighty gathered together, none of the invited guests noticed when Mara Kita disappeared. Yeah, it told me a lot more about this supposed esteemed gathering than they probably wanted me to know. As vice president for sales and marketing at Scorpio Corporation, Kita was the guest of honor at tonight's gala. You think they would have noticed when she fucking vanished. Scene break. 4 of us gathered in an alcove upstairs, hidden from the ballroom while the gala continued downstairs, its entitled guests blithely partying. The small room here gleamed, white with silver accents. Detective Talon, the head of security for Scorpio Corporation, paced across the alcove, rigid in her gray uniform, with silver hair and silver ribbing on her sleeves. She surveyed our group as if she were trying to fix us in place with her stare. Screw that. I had no patience for people who expected to intimidate me instead of earning my respect. Besides myself and Talon, our group included 2 other people, Colonel Lavinda Majda, third in line to the Majda throne, and of course, Mara Kita's husband, Lucas Kita. We were isolated from the gala. Lavinda's aide, the esteemed Lieutenant Joe Mueller, stood hulking at the bottom of the sweeping staircase that led from this alcove down to the main floor. She was out of earshot, but not out of sight, pretending to be the colonel's assistant. Yeah, right. Majda bodyguards were about as discreet as power hammers. Who knows Mara Kita is gone, Detective Talon demanded. She spoke to Colonel Majda, which made 0 sense. How would Lavinda know? Lucas answered. No one is aware of her disappearance yet except the 4 of us. Light from the chandelier glinted on his silver hair. He was too young and too rich to be going gray. That metallic look had to be deliberate. The effect was gorgeous. So was he, the trophy husband, with his broad shoulders, narrow waist, and handsome face. Lavinda spoke coolly to Talon. Why does it matter who knows? She looked every bit the royal heir, with her dark coloring and aristocratic features. The green tunic and trousers of her dress uniform were sharply pressed, and gold bars gleamed on her shoulders. Her dark eyes, high cheekbones, and smooth skin showed no trace of irregularity. I recognized her upright military carriage because I also stood that way, but only in part. I'd never exuded that sense of authority, a self-assurance so ingrained, I doubted she even realized the confidence she projected. I'd always respected Lavinda, in part because she never tried to intimidate anyone. She did it anyway, to put it mildly, but it wasn't deliberate. Talon's discomfort actually seemed more with Lucas than the colonel. The detective glanced at Lucas when he spoke, but then looked away quickly and talked to Lavinda instead. It could help to know, she told the colonel. None of our searches have given any clue why his wife vanished. She might have had her own personal reasons. Ouch. That was about as subtle as thwacking Lucas with a hammer. I doubted his wife had run off with another man. Why do it in the middle of this gala intended to honor her? Lucas wouldn't have asked for our help if he believed it was anything that simple, not to mention humiliating. That he'd called us here suggested he had good reason to suspect trouble. Lucas spoke with restraint, but his body had gone so tense, he seemed like a band of elastic ready to snap. She didn't have a personal reason. Talon grunted, and she still wouldn't look at him. I mean, seriously? The atavistic era was long gone when matriarchal queens owned their men, when no woman could speak to a highborn man unless she was a member of his family. Modern culture gave men equal rights with women. In the Scolian Imperialate, a star-spanning civilization with nearly 1 trillion people, almost no one followed those ancient customs. Only a few of the most conservative noble houses, which included Majda. Since they cloistered their princes, hiding the prized fellows from the rest of the universe, some families here among the highest society followed similar customs. Although legally they couldn't get away with keeping their men in full seclusion, they weren't Majdas after all. They could still be ridiculously sexist. Lucas had asked us to come here, though, so I doubted he had any use for those barbaric constraints. I spoke directly to Lucas. How did you discover your wife was gone? He turned to me, his shoulders coming down from their hunched position. Mara was about to announce the Scorpio contract with Metropoly. She intended to present the Metropoly executives here with a scroll, a ceremonial parchment. She went to get it about an hour ago. When she didn't return, I looked for her. He raked his hand through his hair, messing it up, which revealed more than he knew. He didn't care about his appearance. He just wanted to know what the hell had happened to his wife. She wasn't in our room, he continued. The remains of the scroll were on the bed. It was ripped up like it had been caught in a fight. Talon frowned as if he were a lying child. Those ceremonial scrolls are museum pieces. Oh, for flaming sake. What was wrong with Talon? He finds the bedroom in shambles and her only comment about the damage is to a thing? Lucas met her gaze, neither averting his eyes nor stepping back. What's your point? He looked ready to explode. I spoke quickly before Talon could cram her foot further down her throat. Your wife went to a lot of trouble for this gala. It must be quite an achievement, what she arranged on Metropoly. He took a deep breath, waited a moment, and then spoke in a more even voice. Yes, it is. She was about to make the announcement. Scorpio Corporation will be managing the usage franchises for the Northern Continent on Metropoly. Holy shit. No wonder Marakita wanted to party. Usage franchises meant Scorpio had just taken over the electric and optical utilities for the largest continent on the most populous world of the Imperialate. A contract like that would involve billions of people and trillions of credits. Nothing could hide the admiration in Lucas's voice, And I had the impression he appreciated what she had achieved because of her accomplishment, not because he expected to gain from it in financial or social terms. He offered a refreshing contrast to the other guests I'd met tonight. I see, Talon said. She watched me with poorly disguised suspicion. People in cries claimed I had a wild quality, whatever that meant. It was true, I could go places no cries citizen dared visit, but no one here knew that. Besides, I was the least dangerous person in this room. These people took threatening to an entirely different level, one that would terrify any sane person who understood how the technocrats of cries navigated the currents of power in their glittering city. I wasn't one of them, and I never would be, no matter what my ties to the House of Majda. Well, tough. If Talon thought she could intimidate me into leaving, she had no idea. I met her stare, and her expression hardened. Someone coughed. Talon turned away and spoke to Lucas. Although she sounded awkward, at least she looked at him this time. We need to trace your wife's action, everything she did for the past day. I'll go over it with you, he said. Anything you need, just let me know. Max, I thought, are you getting all this? Yes, I am recording. The thought came from Max, my EI, or evolving intelligence. I used my neural link with him for privacy. He usually lived in my gauntlets, but tonight he resided in the slender bracelets I wore instead. He sent signals via sockets in my wrists along the biooptic threads of my body to bioelectrodes in my brain. Coated with protective chemicals, the electrodes fired my neurons, which my mind interpreted as thought. Tech-induced telepathy. I wished I was actually telepathic so I could figure out what everybody here thought. I had to rely on intuition and my ability to read body language, voices, and facial expressions. Talon took Lucas through every detail of the gala preparations. Security had already searched the bedroom looking for a body. They found nothing. They also checked the monitors. Big surprise, the footage for those vital moments in the bedroom was missing, with no clues yet as to why or how. What I don't get, Talon was saying, is why someone destroyed the scroll. It's as valuable as your wife, maybe even more so. Lucas stiffened, and I just stared at the detective. Was she brain dead? She continued, oblivious to the pain she was causing Lucas. Whatever ransom they can get for her would be greatly increased if they also held the scroll hostage. That assumes this is a kidnapping, I said, more to stop her than because I actually thought something else had happened. Lucas turned to me with a jerk, as if he were trying to escape Talon's words. What else would it be? To answer that, I said, I need to look more at the bedroom. Detective Talon frowned at me. This is an internal Scorpio matter. We will take care of it ourselves, Officer. She paused, as if waiting for my name, which pissed me off, because as the chief investigator here, she would have checked my identity with her EI the moment we met. Her refusal to acknowledge my name was an insult more effective than any word she might have used. Diplomacy, I reminded myself. Be courteous. I said only, Major Bajan, Army, retired. I'm not a police officer, I'm a PI. And why are you here? Talon spoke with disdain, in an accent that sounded Iotic, the language spoken by the nobility. It also sounded fake. I wasn't impressed. Lavinda turned her cool gaze on Talon and spoke in a true Iotic accent, which I doubted she even thought about. Major Bajan works for the House of Majda. I requested her presence. Oh, Talon closed her mouth. I wondered what stake Lavinda had in this. As a sister to General Vaj Majda, the matriarch of the House of Majda, she operated on a level of power I could only imagine. She was also a colonel in the Pharaoh's army. I doubted she had either the interest or the time to involve herself in her family's corporate dealings. The third sister, Korajita Majda, ran their finances. I hadn't expected such a highly ranked Majda to attend the gala, but given what I just heard about the Metropolis deal, I saw now why they were interested. They controlled the city, and that meant knowing everything that went on at its highest levels. It was also obvious why Lucas requested Levin to join us. He was no fool. He knew whose presence would get the police snapping on this case. Can you help? He asked me. Smart choice. Asking an heir to the Majda throne would be presumptuous, but addressing the Majda rep acknowledged their sway. I'll do my best, I said. I'm good at finding people. Talon spoke tightly. We are grateful to the House of Majda for offering this aid in our investigation. She didn't sound grateful. She sounded like she wanted to throw me out the window. All right, scene break. The bedroom looked like hell. Cracked tables, shattered holo screens, and mirrors and jagged shards lay on the ground. A filigreed nightstand had broken in two. The scroll did indeed lay on the bed, torn and crumpled. But even with that, I recognized its value. I'd grown up in the ancient ruins under the city, a buried world rich with the remnant of past ages, and I'd learned to respect such artifacts. This one didn't look native to Raylicon. It probably came from the planet Parthonia, the seat of the Imperial government, which made it even more valuable. I had to admit, Talon had a point. Who in their right mind would destroy that scroll? Marakita plus the artifact would bring the kidnappers more wealth than Mara alone. Max, I thought, make a record of all this. Use my eye filters. I'm recording in the optical spectrum, he answered, also infrared and ultraviolet. Good, I thought. A holo screen on one wall was cycling through views of the room. I blinked, startled. I barely recognized the tall woman it showed, a statuesque figure in a shimmering gold evening gown with a cloud of black curls falling down her back. Yeah, that was me. Strange. My walk around the room gave Max many views of the wreckage. I paused by Talon. Can you send the police reports after their analysis finished their work here? The detective turned her cold stare on me. Aren't you making your own recordings? Yes, but I can't get the same deal as their experts. Talon knew that. It's up to them if they send you their report. She turned back to her work, ignoring me. I gritted my teeth. She knew perfectly well that if I asked for the report as the Majda rep, she had to send it to me. Let it go, I told myself. I had no interest in getting involved in a turf war. Lucas paced the room, restless, never pausing, but he stayed back, respecting our space. He had class, this one. I didn't want to like him on principle because I'd grown up in poverty and these people were all too rich. But I couldn't help it. He seemed like a decent fellow. When he caught me watching him, he came to where I stood with Talon. What do you think? He directed his question to us both, letting us figure out whatever hierarchy we were inflicting on each other. Smart. I wouldn't want to get between me and Talon either. Your wife clearly fought with her captors, Talon said. It's possible, I said, but something is off. I motioned at the mess scattered across the floor. It doesn't look like anyone stepped on this debris. Those broken mirror shards are like knives, but none of them show any sign of blood. and it would take more force than 2 fighters slamming into that nightstand to break it in half. Lucas went very still, hope warring with fear on his face. You don't think they fought with Mara? I gave him the truth. I'd say an explosion blew apart this room. Talon spoke quickly. I doubt it. Before I could respond, she walked away. I tamped down my anger. The last thing Lucas needed was to see the investigators on his wife's case at odds. I even understood why Talon left so abruptly. It wasn't just to piss on the PI trespassing on her jurisdiction. She didn't want to tell Lucas his wife probably had died. I realized then her rudeness with him came from awkwardness rather than insensitivity. She had no clue what protocol applied to a man with his high rank and, with his beauty too. He rattled even me, and I'd thought I was immune to that sort of thing. She obviously wasn't comfortable talking to him without his wife present. Lucas spoke quietly to me. I haven't received a ransom demand. That isn't so unusual, I said. She disappeared less than an hour ago. It could be a while before they contact you. His face paled. And if this was an explosion? I spoke as gently as I could. We found no trace of blood or any clue that she suffered injuries. It was the closest I could come to reassuring him. Lucas rubbed the heel of his hand over his eyes, smearing away tears. I don't understand. He lowered his arm, watching me as if willing us to make sense out of this nightmare. We planned so long for tonight. She was so happy. I can't believe it ended like this. I'm sorry. I meant it. I swear to you, we'll do everything we can to bring her home. Thank you, Major. He went back to pacing. I exhaled, fearing I'd raised his hopes too much. This didn't look good. No, that was too mild a word. It looked like bloody hell. I continued my investigation, not only of the bedroom, but also the surrounding areas. I stopped on the landing of the curving staircase, the one near the foyer, and stood at the railing, studying the foyer below. Talon joined me. The police analysts are here. We've also set up monitors in case Delkita gets a ransom demand. Delkita. She used a high title of respect for Lucas, only a hair's breadth below Lord. She had to get me the report, so she wasn't telling me much. But at least she was trying to be civil. Maybe with Lucas somewhere else, she felt she could relax. I touched the crystal sphere at the top of the banister. It was just the right size to rest your hand on as you started down the stairs. Someone twisted this, I said. Talon peered at the ball. Light from the chandeliers refracted through the crystal, creating a rainbow on the rail. Looks normal to me. I tapped the stem of the ball. See that mark? Someone turned the sphere. Talon straightened up. I doubt it means anything. Probably not. It just struck me as odd that in such a perfectly kept mansion, this ornament was so out of place. Lucas came over to us. I don't see any way someone could have broken into the bedroom. We'll figure it out, Talon said, gazing at his shoulder. His voice cracked. She has to be all right. Talon finally looked at him. We'll do everything we can to find her. Lucas just stared down the staircase. The guests had left, and the robo-servers that cleaned the mansion were waiting patiently for the police analysts to finish their work. Yeah, I knew the cleaners were machines, that patience didn't come into it. But they looked that way. Robots of all sizes and shapes, arrayed in a silent row, while human analysts applied yet other machines to study the crime scene. Lucas took a deep breath. I should check on things. You go on, Talon told him. We'll let you know if we find anything. He nodded and headed downstairs, gripping the railing. He was damn convincing as the distraught spouse. At a gut level, I believed him. I had to think about the rest of it, however, that he and Marakita had no children. He was his wife's sole heir. Lucas had a lot to gain. She died. All right, I'm going to read one more scene. It's a bit shorter. And then if people have questions, you can ask them afterwards. The night drowsed with a crystalline purity of air. I stood outside the mansion, one of the last people to leave after the gala. A few light globes floated off to the right, above a patio the guests had deserted hours ago. I walked along a path paved with blue stones. Lawns dotted with tiny white flowers lay on either side, and the delicate scent of night-blooming jas filled the air. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the gardens. I just knew too well the other side of that tender beauty. Except for the night-blooming flower, everything else growing here came from off-world. Native plants here were spiky and tough, better suited for desert survival than making gardens pretty. I pulled up the shoulder strap of my damn dress. The blasted thing kept slipping down my arm. Max, I thought, have the city transport authority send a flyer. It would be good to get home. Done, Max answered. I headed for the curving driveway about 1 kilometer from the house, where I could meet the flyer. Silence surrounded me. Not only was the Kita mansion on the outskirts of the city, but sound dampeners here also muted the hum of cries. I stumbled on a rock in the path and caught myself. Damn heels, I thought. Damn dress. You wear them well. You wear them well. Max supposedly didn't have emotions, but his amusement was all too realistic. So many men try to pick you up before, or women. I'd never gotten used to the way upper crust types found me sexy in what one fellow called an untamed way. I stopped and pulled off my heels. Holding them in my hand, I continued in bare feet. Max, you need to learn some new idioms. English has some good ones. Why ever would I want to learn English idioms, he thought. How about this one? Silence is golden, especially from EIs who find my life so amusing. I am an EI assistant. I don't experience amusement. He didn't sound wet, less amused. I stopped, distracted. The silence here was too golden at the mansion. Concentrating, I tried to pick up a sound. Any sound. What's wrong? Max asked. Turn up my ear augmentations. Any good investigator had biomech augmentation, including enhancements to her ears, eyes, skeleton, and musculature. I received the basic combat mods when I enlisted, an upgrade when I transitioned to the officer ranks. It was invaluable in my work, and I kept my system at the top of the game. As Max activated my ear mods, sounds intensified. The scrape of leaves against leaves, a breeze whispering over the lawns, the buzz of picorusics, tiny flying reptiles that lived in the desert, but sometimes wandered into city gardens. Normally, my enhanced hearing was too intense to use for long, but tonight, the garden still seemed too quiet. A faint clink came off to my left. I dove into the garden and rolled, my legs tangling in my stupid dress. In that same instant, the lilies next to the path where I'd been standing lit up in the blast of a nail laser. Damn! I jumped to my feet and dropped my shoes. Grabbing my dress, I hiked it up to my hips, holding it in one hand while I sprinted through the garden, my stride stretched out to its full length. I clutched my little gold purse in my other hand, not because I liked little gold purses, I hated the things, but it contained useful stuff. Combat mode toggled, Max thought. I'm activating your internal microfusion reactor. Somewhere behind me, the garden hissed with a shot. I ran harder, doubling my speed. Rocks jabbed my calloused feet. As I dodged back and forth, a lawn at my side flared with another shot. Max! With my free hand, I shook my purse open. Have the beetle shorten this damn dress. A little green beetle zipped out of my purse. It extended its blades and proceeded to cut off the bottom half of my dress while I ran. Its AI brain managed to keep it from chopping me up too, despite the way it bounced around. Within seconds, I was running in a gold shift that fell around my hips in tatters. As I dodged onto a lawn, the dirt next to me hissed with a nail shot. I sent a command to the beetle through my link to Max. Find out who is shooting at me. The beetle whisked away to the night. A public flyer is waiting for you on the driveway, Max thought. Why hasn't security kicked in? The city monitor should have whipped that shooter. Someone, he thought, must have deactivated security. Yeah, no shit. To block city security required a clearance higher than anyone in this investigation could claim, except for Colonel Lavinda Majda. I ran out into the sweeping curve of the driveway. A silver flyer waited there. As I sprinted for it, darting back and forth, a nail shot exploded the ground. The hatch of the flyer snapped open and I threw myself inside. Get us out of here, I yelled. With my enhanced speed, it looked as if the pilot was moving in slow motion. To her credit, she took off without hesitation, the craft leaping into the air as its hatch snapped shut. I slid across the deck and plowed into a passenger seat. Within seconds, we were above the city. As I pushed up on my hands and knees, the pilot looked back at me. You pay now, she said, and you give me your clearance. Combat mode off, Max thought. My sense of speed returned to normal. Clearance for what? I climbed into the passenger seat, doing my best to project a calm, civilized appearance. I doubted it worked, with my hair in a wild mess, my dress in tatters, and my breath coming in gasps. Hell if I know, the pirate said. She turned back to her controls. You give me a reason why I should help a raggedy-assed woman running out of a mansion with people shooting at her. Look at your screen, I told her. Max would have already sent my ID to pay for the transport. A ping came from the cockpit. Well, shit, the pilot said. Majda. As uncomfortable as I felt within the Majda realm of influence, I couldn't deny that being on their payroll had its advantages. Take me to the city outskirts. I gave her coordinates for the entrance to the concourse, a great underground boulevard in the desert beyond the city of Cries. The concourse was supposedly part of the Undercity, those ancient ruins that lay beneath the desert. But in reality, it just served as a glitzy source of revenue for the city of Cries. The true Undercity, where I'd grown up, existed far below the gleaming concourse. While the pilot brought the flyer around in a long arc, I pondered the Majdas. They had sent me to the gala and called me in on the investigation when Marakita disappeared. They were also the only ones who could have deactivated the city security monitors. Coincidence? I doubted it. I needed to find out what was up. My life could depend on the answer. That's it. So you got to read the book to find out what happens. So does anyone have any questions about the book or about anything, any of my books, any of my writing? We still have about 5 minutes left. Yes. Hi, Linda.
I always have questions. I wish there was a day I didn't. So I was curious about your process because and you and I've talked, I like science too and all that stuff. And when I'm writing, it's a certain kind of process in it all coming together. For you, do you like how do you mix in the science and math stuff, or is that all an integral part of the story as it comes to you?
Um, I'd say it's an integral part of the story. You know, I am a scientist, so when I first started writing science fiction, I didn't even know I was putting in the science. You know, I mentioned this in another panel. It wasn't until the editor started talking about, yeah, I like that you put, you know, science in your stories, that I realized I was doing it. I mean, I grew up around science. My dad was the chemist who found the iridium anomalies that led him, the four of them, him, Luis Alvarez, Alvarez's son, and Helen Michael, to propose that an asteroid hit the Earth and killed off a lot of things, including the dinosaurs. So I grew up around that. I took it for granted. So yeah, I don't consciously think, am I putting it in? I think I have about 30 books now. And I think over that time, I became more aware of what I was doing because people liked it, as long as I didn't overdo it. Though I still, you know, even now I get people say, oh, there was all this junk in her book. You know, what I just read, they say there's too much stuff, sciencey stuff. So, you know, it's I don't know. There's a fine line between, you know, I try to stay on the line of not doing it too much. By the way, Hal, can you unmute people? I mean, folks who are listening, you can type messages in chat. But Hal, if you could unmute them, they could also ask questions. No, you
I
just need.
believe they can unmute themselves, but I'll certainly ask them to unmute if that's needed.
Oh, yeah. If anybody wants to ask a question, feel free to unmute, or you can type it in the chat. Like I'll type my webpage, catherineasaro.net. Oh, there we go. Also, do you guys know what Patreon is? I have a Patreon page, which I very much like because keeps me from having to go wait tables.
And I just let James Glass back in, and I should apologize for the length of time it took, but the name you have on Zoom is so long that I couldn't actually see the admit button and had to resize the window. So you are here and you're unmuted.
Cal,
yes,
can you hear me?
We can hear you. And
okay, what happened is that my computer crashed. All of a sudden, I have a jetpack, and I think my jetpack overheated, and I've just been frantic here because Catherine and I have a panel tomorrow morning, and yeah, this is Jim Glass, owner of Gail's Dance. I'm on my wife's computer, so that's where the identity comes up. I'm sorry, I missed most of your reading.
Oh, I understand.
Because I was frantically trying to get going again. I finally turned off my jetpack and let it cool, and that worked. So I'm back on again.
Oh, good.
Well, you are back, and it's Q&A time. So if you have any questions for Catherine, now's the chance.
I only heard about the first 10 or 15 minutes of her reading, so I don't really have any questions. But I just want people to know I'm back, and thank God, because tomorrow morning I got 2 panels in a row. So I'm freaked out. I'm still freaked out. So
it takes a while.
Nice to see you again, Catherine. It's been probably 10 years since we were on a panel together.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, I have one question. I haven't read your books for some time now. What book would you recommend that I get that's fairly recent?
Have you read any of the major Bajan books?
No.
I would start with Undercity.
What was it called again?
Undercity. I'll type it into
Undercity.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the first of them. Though you can read any of them because they're not sequels. But that's one of my more recent. I could, you said you missed stuff. I actually have I didn't realize I have until 4:15. I could read one more scene. I mean, would people like that?
Well, you know, the way I read, I tend to read just a few books, you know, to see what people do when they're successful, and then I, you know, try to get some hints from that.
I
Anyway,
remember reading your book.
see you tomorrow morning.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to read. Let's see how long. Yeah, this. I think I could read this scene.
Yeah, you got 15 minutes, Catherine.
All right, I'll read one more scene. I strode onto the main floor of the Black Mark Casino. No one blinked at my ripped gold scrap of a dress. I fit right in. Holographic roulette wheels spun in the air above the tables, glowing in neon colors, while patrons bet and lost. Other gamblers sat around tables in chairs with diamond accents. Dealers who were far too beautiful dealt them cards, cubes, spheres, discs, rods, or whatever other game pieces the players wanted. The games were mostly holographic, run by the house. I mean, seriously, who would bet on games of chance controlled by a house EI system? It always beat you, unless it calculated it needed to let you win a few times to keep you coming back. In the end, you lost, and lost again. You could lose your soul to the black mark if you weren't careful. A man in a silver shirt and tight trousers lounged against a table, watching me. I ignored his predatory gaze. Yeah, I recognized his arrogant body language. I knew the aristocratic sheen of his glitter rags. He was probably among the wealthiest of the wealthy in cries, illicitly coming to the casino in the depths of the true Undercity. Sure, he had plenty to offer. Gifts, drugs, and who knew what the hell else. I didn't care. I stalked past him without a glance. Someone caught my arm. I swung around, raising my fist, my adrenaline surging, and froze. A bartender stood there. Her slink suit showed more skin than it covered. Her makeup glittered, and the holo stars in her black hair sparkled. I lowered my arm. I had no intention of slugging my best friend, Dara. She pulled me over to the bar and spoke in the terse Undercity dialect. What goes? You look ready to blow. Need to talk to Jack, I said, fast. He always had his ear tuned to the Undercity whisper mill. If rumors were going around about what had happened at the gala, he'd know. I get, Dara said. Stay here. She sped off, soon lost amid the patrons and holos. Taking a deep breath, I leaned against the bar, surveying the clientele to see if their behavior offered any useful info they didn't know they were revealing. I recognized a few guests from the gala, come here to slum it in the Undercity's infamous den of vice. I watched them discreetly, but no one did anything interesting. The other bartenders left me alone, though they did glance my way when they thought I didn't notice. It would be all over the Undercity whisper mill tomorrow. Baj showed up at the casino dressed like a blitzed out city slick instead of like Baj. A group of slicks wandered over to me. 2 men and 2 women, all dressed in scraps of metallic cloth that covered almost none of their bodies. They looked like sib fibs, a weird trend among the wealthy in cries, pretending they were machines rather than people. One of the men had a gold face, and the woman with him had eyes the color of polished titanium coins. The other woman had a cybernetic arm that glowed with tech-mech. It looked like solid gold, but more likely it used some hardened alloy that wouldn't dent. The second man had implants in his ears that flashed in light patterns I knew were supposed to make me dizzy. They didn't have the intended effect any more than the swirling holos in the casino could entice me to gamble. I'd never been particularly susceptible to suggestion, and the biomech in my body further blocked the effects. The man with ear implants leaned against the bar next to me and gave me the once-over, letting his gaze linger on my body. I felt like punching him. He leaned in closer, bringing his lips to my ear, and spoke in the Cries upper city dialect. You've got good sib. I've got better. Want to try it out? Fuck off, I said, ever the epitome of tact. I didn't have to act civilized here in the Black Mark. And after some city slick had just tried to kill me, I had no intention of pretending otherwise. The woman with the cyber arm laughed at her friend as she tilted her head at me. You won't get honey from that, Kit. Kit my ass, I thought. I might look young, but I was probably twice their age. The man took my arm. Your accent is undercity. You a dust rat, aren't you? I twisted out of his grip and pulled his arm behind his back while I swung him around. Touch me again, asshole, I said in a perfect Cries accent, and I'll break your elbow. Hey, the woman with the cyber arm pulled him free. Get your respect together, rat, she snapped at me, or you'll regret it. She had that tone I hated. I tensed, my fists clenching. Baj, stand down, Max thought. Let it go. I took a steadying breath and stepped back from the group. Not interested, I said. He didn't ask if you were interested, Cyberarm said. The other woman shook her head at her friend, probably her equivalent of Max telling me to stand down. To me, she just said, you're lost. Earplants looked me over avidly. You've got pump, he said, whatever that meant. He sounded like he intended it as a compliment. Come with us. We'll make it worth your time. Seriously? He thought I'd go with them for gifts. I probably had more wealth than the four of them combined. After living the first 16 years of my life in poverty, and then 20 years in the austere life of the Pharaoh's army, I saved my earnings with an obsessive intensity that these slicks would probably never understand, given the gilded life they most likely took for granted. I was annoyed enough, though, that I couldn't resist baiting him. Worth my time how? What do you want? He sounded sure of himself again, in familiar territory, offering to buy whatever took his fancy. Credits, jewelry, hack, bliss, you name it. Baj, cut it out, Max thought. Leave them alone. Oh, all right. Sorry, I told Earplants. Really, I'm not interested. You won't find better, he told me. I mean it. Whatever you want. A dark voice spoke behind me, sensuous and smooth, but with a steely undertone of eagerness that said, push me, go ahead, see what happens, with its tone. Out loud, he said, she already has everything she needs. Their gazes shifted to a point beyond my shoulder, and they froze. I turned. A man stood there, tall and leanly muscled, dressed in black, from his sleeveless muscle shirt to his rough trousers to his 1,000-credit belt. An old scar stretched down his cheek that he'd never bothered to get fixed, and a gnarled scar snaked across his left bicep. Violence simmered in his gaze. He was menace and sexuality incarnate, with the face of a threatening god and the aura of a man who'd earned his wealth from the darkest side of human nature. Jack had arrived. He spoke to the Sibfibs with a terrifyingly pleasant voice. I see you met my wife. His wife, I thought? Where the bloody hell did that come from? Ear implants looked ready to shit platinum bricks. My apologies, sir. We meant no offense. We were just leaving. Yes, just leaving. Cyberarm spoke fast, stepping back. You're welcome to keep enjoying my establishment. Jack was practically purring. He lifted his hand, indicating the worst of his rigged roulette wheels. Please be my guest. The Sibfibs all bowed to him. I mean, bowed for fucking sake. After which they made a fast retreat, heading off to his tables to lose more money and make him happy. I swung around to him. Your wife? Fuck that, Jack. A slow, drowsy smile spread across his face. Yeah, Bajo, sure. I strode past him, headed for the back of the room, to a discreet stairway without any gleam or glitz. I didn't look back as I went up the stairs. Holos activated in front of me just enough to light the way, and then went dark after I passed. I headed into the secret depths of the casino owned by Mean Lean Jack, the most notorious criminal kingpin in the Undercity. And if you want to find out about her and Jack, you have to get the book. Yes, he never called her his wife before. She never called him her husband. So she's kind of pissed at him for that.
We have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to throw out a question if nobody else has one, and that is that you have a major bibliography here for somebody that's only just retired to become a full-time writer. You have a lot of books out. Where should a new reader start in on all of that?
Wow, that's hard. I would say starting with Undercity, any of these books, the major Bajan books. The Vanished Seas is the most recent. That was number 3. Number 2 was called The Bronze Skies. And number 1 is Undercity, because they don't depend, although they're in the same universe as a lot of my other books, they don't depend on knowing what went on in them. And they're pretty much standalone. You know, if you've already read one of the earlier ones and she happens to mention it in the flashback, you go, oh, yeah, that was that other book. But you don't have to have that. For the Skolian Empire series, the Ruby Dynasty books, The Last Talk is completely standalone. It's in the middle of the chronology, but it was the first one I ever wrote before I wrote anything else. So that's a good one to read for a standalone. Primary Inversion was the first one I wrote. It's sort of around the time frame of The Last Talk. My preferred version is the ebook version of that, the e-version, because I rewrote it. You know, I'm a much better writer. It was my first book that was published, and I'm a better writer now. So that's another one. And then The Radiant Seas is one of the best I think I've written. It was a sequel to Primary Inversion. It's a big one. They're all supposed to be standalones. You know, the Quantum Rose, which that one won the Nebula, which floored me. It utterly floored me when that won. But that's a standalone. It's like a retell. The first half is like a retelling of Beauty and the Beast in a science fiction setting. And it's a little more traditional than some of my other books. But the characters, she's never appeared in any other book. And we meet someone who was peripherally in some of my other books as a side character, but we meet him through her eyes. So you don't have to know anything about him. You learn with her. So that's another good one. So I got to tell you, when that won the Nebula, I remember when it was up for, and I was against all these really good people I was sure were going to win, like George R.R. Martin, Connie Willis. I think there's some big hard SF people there. I think Jeffrey Landis was one of them. They were really big names. And then me, who was not a big name. And I genuinely was convinced I would not win. And I'm sitting with Nancy Kress, and she says, Catherine, did you write your acceptance speech? And I said, no, I didn't bother. I'm not going to win anything. She goes, Catherine, you have to write something. And I said, why? She said, well, I didn't write anything when I won a Nebula because I didn't think I'd win. And then they announced my name. She said, but before I did it, someone told me to write something down just in case. And she said, I'm so glad I did. And so she talked me into it. I had, you know, those little badges they give you like at conventions, right? So I had one of those and I took it out and I wrote some stuff on the back. I think what happened, have any of you here remember in the Olympics, there was that one time where there was a whole bunch of people running and they all ran into each other? Do any of you remember that? It was a big pile of they were all running and all the people in the front ran into each other and fell over in this big pile. It's like a classic scene from an old Olympics. And so the people behind ran around them and won. And I think that's what happened to me. I think all these really famous authors, because they were so different, you had George writing fantasy, and then you had Connie writing Connie Willis stories. the vote. So I went around him and won with the quantum rose, my retelling of Beauty and the Beast. But I was so stunned. My agent told me that I just sat there with my mouth open. And I was supposed to get up, right, and accept the word. I just sat there staring at the stage with my mouth open. And she said she was about to get up and go accept for me when somebody finally pushed me and I went up there. And God bless Nancy Kress. I took out the back of my badge and read. I was shaking literally as I read it. So that was nice.
So that was your first nebula.
Yes, that was my first one. The second the second was also for a romance. It really surprised me. I mean, the Quantum Rose is Beauty and the Beast, but it's also an allegory to quantum scattering theory, and all the chapters have subtitles, which are quantum scattering processes. And I have this essay in the back where I explain it. Because the Quantum Rose is a very sort of lyrical, sensual story. I didn't want to stop it with scientific stuff. And the main character didn't know enough about it to think about it anyway. So I put it all in the back of the book. So it was a romance with hard SF overtones, but it didn't feel, it almost had a fantasy feel, even though it was definitely science fiction and there was a lot of science in it. The same with the one that won the Nebula for novella was called The Space-Time Pool. And it was very mathematical, it was this whole universe based on complex variable theory and all the stuff that happened. This woman essentially falls through a mathematical slit in the universe into another universe. And I went through all the explanations of it. But it's also very much a romance. And those are the two that won the Nebula of all the things. I thought it would have been one of my hard SF stories or, a big space military adventure, but it was the more romantic one.
Yeah, those other ones were just nominated, right?
Yeah. The Last Talk was nominated. And that floored me too. I couldn't believe it was a very feminist book at a time when there wasn't as much.
Yeah, I love how you feel so surprised that you won. And I'm looking down a list of your awards and your nominations, and it's not short.
No, it's not. Yeah, I know. It surprised me.
We are out of time. Did you want to say anything to wrap up, Catherine?
Just thank you all for coming. I really appreciate. I didn't know, since I don't know people as much in Arizona, I didn't know if anybody would come. So thank you.
Well, we definitely need to fix that, and we will try and do that in the future. We will certainly remain in touch. I'm sure Linda would be very happy should you come out to a convention here, right? Right, Linda?
Yeah, we'll have to get lunch.
I'm already happy from just being on a panel with her yesterday. I can't sleep.
That was fun. That was a good. Yeah. Thank you all. And Paula, hi. I can't see you, but hi. Michelle, what's your last, or can
there.
I ask? There you are.
Yeah, there I am. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, I can see your glasses. Oh.
Yeah, well, so there are more major Baja books.
What? Oh yeah, I'm working on one. It's actually, it was due 5 days ago, and I finished the first draft, and then I told him how long it was, and he said, why don't you take another month to make it shorter? Which is what I wanted him to say. But all of you, I want to see all of you. Those of you I've met before and those of you I haven't. AE and Jim and Chris, you've been at every single panel, I think, that I've done.
Yeah, I only got the note about CoKoCon an hour and a half ago or so. It's like, oh.
Oh, I was going to post it on my Facebook page, but my computer died and I'm using my daughter's computer and I finally got on Facebook last night. I lost my email because I couldn't remember the password and they wouldn't give it to me because they send the reset password to your email address. I didn't know so I finally remembered and I came back on.
Yeah, well, I have multiple computers. I mean, it's like, hey, you can afford to get a backup computer in case your computer dies.
I should. Yeah, that's so smart to do. I should definitely. Well, I thought I had one, but it didn't work. I tried to boot it and it's dead.
Of course, Windows.
Redundancy is really good, and so is redundancy.
Well, I mean, I mislay things. I've got at least three working laptops around me, but I mean, one of them is a really cheap piece of shit. I call it chiss, but the thing is that if I need something that at least runs, it's there.
Yeah, I should do that. I should have been checking that one I had as a backup to make sure it was actually still working. Chris, I think
I just want to.
I've seen.
I want
at
to
this
thank you for the reading. I'm always on the lookout for authors that are new to me. So, and and when I saw, how accomplished you were, I thought I better give it a listen. So I very much enjoyed the reading. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, if you're looking for recommendations, the S.K. Dunstill are a pair of sisters in Australia who have 5 books out that are quite good. One of them involves there's two of them have 2 main characters. One of them is a body modder.
A what?
A body modder. In other words, she has a tank and people go in and they get their bodies modified. So you can have your hair color changed, your skin color changed, your add mass or lose mass.
All that stuff.
I reviewed the 2 Stars Uncharted books. I loved the first one. It's as close as I've got to reading Firefly in fiction.
Yeah,
in the original universe.
He's referring to the 2 books, the Stars Uncharted and Stars.
Beyond.
I don't remember the name, but the first book was Linesman. But they write really good space opera.
Yeah, I can heartily recommend that first one. Yeah.
Who is the one? Somebody asked me. Who did somebody want to put? I'm sorry. Somebody asked me what book to start with, and Linda, I think I was sending messages that I meant to send to everybody, just to you.
Oh,
put it here. Undercity. Don't ask me what book to read. I wasn't ignoring you if you asked me that. I sent it, but I was sending it all to Linda. Linda, you were getting all sorts of email messages from me.
We're so connected now.
It's so easy to do that. So easy.
Yeah, Zoom is annoying that way because it doesn't reset. It stays with whoever you sent the private message to.
Right. And I had asked you a question, so, early on. So it probably stayed like talking to me.
Yeah, it did that. It did exactly that.
Well, we are over time, so I should probably shut this Zoom session down. Thank you, Catherine Asaro.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Hal, for being
reader,
a
Catherine. You're such a good reader. Great pacing. Wonderful.
And Catherine, I believe you will be back tomorrow for a couple of panels.
Yeah, that's right. Sort of afternoon panels.
So check those out tomorrow and enjoy the rest of the convention. Pop into the other panels that are happening. The charity auction is still going on if you want to go bid on what's still to come. And the consuite is open. So if you just want to go chat, you can go do it there. So enjoy CoKoCon. Thank you all.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.